Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this event entitled The Pandemic Interventionism. I am Radu Mușetescu, the host of this special event that allows us, a community of freedom lovers, to interact with the distinguished professor Walter Block, one of the intellectual leaders of libertarianism today. This event is made possible by a number of individuals and organizations. First of all, it is the Faculty of International Business and Economics from the Bucharest University of Economics. It is the Romanian American University from Bucharest, the World Economy Institute from Romania, and also the Association of Academeya. The sponsor of this event, which also made us possible to meet today, is Czech Bank, a Romanian bank from Bucharest, as well as the media partner is the station Via Cluj TV. So we are happy to have today in front of us Dr. Walter Block. Allow me in a few words to have a short presentation of him. Is Harold Wirth, Eminent Scholar Chair in Economics in the College of Business at Loyola University, New Orleans, United States of America. He is also an adjunct scholar at the Mises Institute and the Hoover Institute in the United States. Dr. Block has previously taught at the University of Central Arkansas, Holy Cross College, Baruch, Rutgers University. He has a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy from Brooklyn College in 1964 and a Ph.D. degree in economics from Columbia University in 1972. Dr. Walter Block is not only an independent thinker, he's a true think tank of our age. He is the author of 2,000 books. Maybe the most famous one is Defending the Undefendable, a book that was widely read and translated all over the world. He wrote over 600 articles, and this is an impressive career that is still very well furthering his research. He reviews scholarly refereed journals and law reviews, such as Journal of Libertarian Studies, the Quarterly Journal of Austrian Economics, the Review of Austrian Economics, the American Journal of Economics and Sociology, and a lot of others. We are happy to have you, distinguished professor, in front of us, especially during this period, a period that obviously challenged a lot of our thinking, of our actions, and we'll be more than honored to have in this meeting, in this discussion, several, let's say, of your thoughts. And please, we will start by your presentation called Pandemic Interventionism, and later we'll have a short or long session of question and answers from all the participants in this meeting. So welcome in this online event, and you have the floor, sir.
Thanks. Thanks for the wonderful introduction. There is one thing that you mentioned, one word that you mentioned that I have to ask you about before I start. You mentioned the word short. Alex said that I should speak on COVID, the welfare state, market failure, protectionism, and income inequality. So roughly how long do you want me to speak for? Could you tell me 20 minutes, a half hour?
Our let's say our initial target was around 50 minutes or 1 hour, but it's up always to you, sir.
Okay, I just wanted to get an idea because I could do it all in 5 minutes, but very, very superficially, or a little bit more deeply. And what I was thinking of is not an hour, but more 20 minutes, so I could just touch the bases. And then I would much more enjoy interaction with you and your colleagues rather than just me speaking and not having much time for interaction.
That's perfect, sir.
Okay, good. So we'll start with COVID because Alex said that was the most interesting question. How does a libertarian deal with COVID? And there are three schools of thought. I would guess I'd call them the hawks and the doves. The hawks say we should shut down the whole economy. Everyone should wear a mask, and if you don't wear a mask, you should be arrested. We should all stay 6 feet away from each other. We should wash our hands and stuff like that. And the government should heavily intervene. Why? Because COVID is a contagious disease, and the basic element of libertarianism is non-aggression principle. And it's true that there was this woman named Typhoid Mary. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She was in the United States. She had the horrible disease typhoid. And she was working in a restaurant, and she was giving other people typhoid. Now, she had no mens rea. She had no guilty conscience. She wasn't a criminal. She wasn't doing it purposefully, but she was violating rights. Instead of shooting a gun with bullets, she was shooting disease. And I think the proper attitude to deal with her is to make sure she's isolated, make sure she can't communicate a contagious disease of typhoid. So instead of putting her in a jail, you have to confine her to a house or put her in a hotel or something. Treat her nicely. She's not a criminal, but you got to stop her. So if COVID is like that, then we should shut down and isolate everybody, and that would be the hawk position. And that would be roughly the position of Biden, who might be our next president. What's the dove position? The dove position is, the COVID isn't that dangerous. It's no more dangerous than the flu. Yes, it affects people who are 80 years old and have diabetes or cancer or very overweight or have lung problems, and they should isolate. But nobody else should isolate because it doesn't affect anyone else, and it's not that bad. The flu is just as bad or almost as bad, and therefore we should not have any shutdowns or any serious interferences with people's liberty. I think both positions are incorrect, and the proper position is my position. You'll be shocked to to find that out, but my position is we don't know. As libertarians, we have no specialization. We have no comparative advantage. We don't know whether the disease is a horrible disease like typhoid or the Black Plague or something like that, or that it's a minor thing that'll only affect a very old and sick people. We don't know. Why should we have a view? We don't have to have a view on everything. So what I did is I wrote an article in the Journal of Libertarian Studies, and I said, I started quoting the hawks, and I started quoting the doves, and the hawks are saying, we got to stop this. This is horrible, and everyone should shut down. And the doves are saying, if you're afraid, stay at home. And I think the correct view is we don't know. We are just, I'm an economist. We believe in specialization and division of labor. I know nothing about physics. I know nothing about astronomy. I know nothing about, poetry. And I know nothing about epidemiology. I don't know. I don't think anyone knows qua libertarian. Now, we might know personally, and we might have opinions, and I have an opinion, but not as a libertarian. And we have to, I think, distinguish between our views as libertarians and our views as just citizens of the country. So as a libertarian, I have no view, and I'm proud of that because I think that we don't want to go further into analyzing something unless we are sure of ourselves and sure that it follows from libertarianism. Now, what are my own personal views? My own personal views are more like the doves. I don't think it's that dangerous. I don't think that the government should stop everything. And also, from the government's point of view, well, I'm an anarchist, so I'm not really in favor of the government's point of view, but from the point of view of good public policy, what we want to do is minimize deaths, not COVID deaths, but all deaths. And what's happening is they're just looking, like a horse has blinders, and they just look at COVID, and they're trying to minimize COVID deaths. There was the governor of New York State, Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo, who said, if we can save one COVID life, one life from COVID, it's worthwhile shutting down the whole place. Well, if we shut down the whole place, then people can't go to the hospital for cancer treatment. They can't go to the hospital for heart attack, or they can't go for diabetes. They can't. And a lot of people are dying from other things. So from the point of good public policy, we shouldn't care what you're dying from. We should minimize all deaths, or if you want to be more technical about it, minimize years of life lost. So if a 12-year-old person dies, it's much worse than a 90-year-old person dies, because a 12-year-old person has a life expectancy of, 80 years, 70 years, whatever, whereas a person who's 90 has a life expectancy of, 3 years or 5 years or whatever it is. So to be more technical, we want to maximize life, years of life. But forget about that. We just want to maximize lives. And we shouldn't just look at COVID lives. Now, sometimes it's good to have blinders and look carefully at one thing, but not here. So that would be my view on COVID. And the next thing on my list is the welfare state. And if this is not a good topic, it's all Alex's fault. So don't blame me. He's the one who suggested these topics. And during the question and discussion period, people would be free to mention other issues and maybe get my views as a libertarian on them as well. So what's going on with the welfare state? What's going on with the welfare state? And here I'm channeling a book by Charles Murray, an acquaintance, a buddy of mine, sort of a friend of mine, who wrote, he's most famous for his book, what is it? The one on IQ. I forget the name of it. But I'm now thinking of The Bell Curve. That's he's most famous for that book. But he's written many other books, and the one that I'm now looking at is a thing called Losing Ground. And what does he say about losing ground? What he says is, first of all, if you want to have economic welfare, if you want to have prosperity, if you want to have a good economy, and my usual answer would be free enterprise. But what he says here is you have to have an intact family. What's an intact family? A mother, a father, and a few children. Whereas if you have just one parent, and it's usually a woman, a parent, the mother is the parent, this is very bad, because we have all sorts of evidence. This is not praxeology from an Austrian point of view, but it's a matter of empirical causal relationships, namely, if you come from a family with a father and a mother, you're more likely to stay in school, you're more likely to have a job, you're less likely to be a criminal, you're more likely to have a good life. And if you only have one parent, a mother, you're more likely to be a criminal, to be unemployed, to be sick, to die, to be shot, to be in a drug, whatever. So an intact family is very good, and a non-intact family is not so good. Now, my research into this issue, I went back to the 1890s, and all from the United States, but it's the same in this is a human issue. And also I did some research in Sweden. It's not a United States issue. This is a human issue. And in the United States, I found that the black and the white family were roughly as intact in 1890, 1900, 1910, 1920, all the way up to about 1960. The white family was a little bit better in the sense there was less divorce and less children without marriage, but it was very close. 1% or 2 differentiated it. Then what happened in 1965 was Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ's Great Society. What's the Great Society? The Great Society is welfare. Give more welfare to everybody. Everybody should have welfare. And what Charles Murray says is that the welfare was so generous that it was more money, not only money, but health care and an apartment and this and that and a lot of money, more money than the father of a child could earn at a minimum wage level, at a low level. So if you're a pregnant girl, you marry the government. You don't marry the man who impregnated you. And all of a sudden, we had a gigantic increase in illegitimate children. Illegitimate, I don't mean that they're illegitimate in the sense that they're invalid or they're bad or something, but just that they weren't born of a stable marriage. They weren't part of a family. Namely, the welfare system broke up the black family. Why was the black family more vulnerable? Because they were more poor. In Sweden, the same thing happened, and there were no black people, or virtually no black people, and the family started falling apart there. Now in the United States, 75% of all black children are in a non-intact family. And the number in before 1960 was, something like in single digits. I don't remember the exact number. And the white family is now, I think, 25% or something like that. The numbers keep changing, and I haven't, got the latest statistics, but this gives you an idea of what's going on. So this is why you have such dire straits for the black family in the United States. That's one big cause. Another big cause is a minimum wage law, which creates unemployment for unskilled workers. The unemployment rate of blacks is twice as high as the unemployment rate of whites, because minimum wage doesn't raise wages. It's rather a barrier over which you have to jump to get a job. And the higher it is, the harder it is to get a job. And the third thing I think that messes up the black community is drug law. We had a prohibition of alcohol early in the last century. And a lot of young Italian men were shooting each other over drug turf. Now we're having over alcohol turf. And we had bathtub gin and poisonous alcohol, and it was very bad. And happily, we don't have that problem. And there's no more problem with alcohol. You want alcohol, you go to the store. Nobody shoots anybody over alcohol. But now with drugs, and I'm not sure why it was young Italian men for alcohol and young black men for drugs. Why isn't it the other way around? I wrote a paper on that. I still don't know, but my idea is, if you don't know, you write a paper anyway, and then maybe someone else will figure it out. You go as far as you can. So these are the three things that I think are messing up the black community: welfare, minimum wage, and drug prohibition. And if you really have the decency and you want to help the black community, as I do, what you do is you get rid of all three, which is anathema to the way most people think about it. Okay, the next thing is market failure. Then I've got protectionism and income inequality. So let me talk a little bit about market failure, and I'll pick two market failures, or maybe three. I think I've got a little time. Well, maybe two, because I want to do the others also. And now I want to get to the screen. So what's going on the screen? Oh, look at that. I've got a supply and demand curve there. Well, okay, got a supply and demand curve. So the first, well, not supply and demand curve yet, but we've got the axes anyway. So here we have price. Wait a second. Price, and here we have quantity. And here we have supply and demand of, I assume everyone knows from supply and demand, right? Yes? Good. Yes. Okay. So I'm not going to try to explain that. If I had to explain that, we'd be here for hours. Okay. So let's call this the quantity of education. And here is private education. This is the demand for private education. So why would people want to have education, private education? Well, they get a better job, meet a better spouse, for the sheer pleasure of learning, although nowadays in the United States, mainly what they're learning is Marxism. So that's a whole other issue, but I'll get to that in a second. So that's the demand for private education. There's the supply of it. And here is the quantity actual. I'm going to put QA for actual quantity. Now, we can add up demand curves. Here's the price and here's quantity. And here's the demand for private education. And here is the the spillover demand for Milton Friedman calls it neighborhood effects or spillover or external economies. I'm now talking about externalities as a market failure. And as an Austrian, I don't believe in any market failure. So first I'm going to present what is the market failure argument, and then I will try to say why it's wrong. So here is the demand on the part of private people in order to, why do they want education to better themselves? But the Milton Friedman idea is that if you have more education, you'll be less of a criminal, less likely to be a criminal. You'll be more likely to be a better voter in elections. You'll invent more things, and that will make everyone's lives easier, better. So this is the demand for public, or the benefit from public, and here is the demand for both. What we're doing is taking the sum and adding them up. So now what I'm going to do is put this other demand curve, the demand curve over here for the sum, and what I'm going to say is that according to Milton Friedman, this is quantity ideal, I for ideal. Namely, what we have is a misallocation of resources. By the way, if anyone has a question, like they don't understand something, please feel free to pipe up now, because if you don't get what I'm saying, we're going to lose it. So let's have what do I say? Technical questions or objections later. But if you just don't understand what I'm saying, maybe I'm speaking too fast. I get enthusiastic about this. Please feel free to, Radu, anyone understand? Anyone?
It's okay. It's perfect.
Everyone understands what I'm doing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what Friedman is saying is that we're misallocating resources, and we really should have more education than the market will do. This is the actual market amount of education. This is the ideal amount of education. And now what should we do? Well, we should have a subsidy, or we should give grants, or whether the subsidy goes to the students or the subsidy goes to the university or the public. We should have public schools, so it's for free. That's a minor issue. The major issue is we should have more. And so this is an external economy, or a positive externality. And this is a market failure, because over here we have, what do we have here? We have education, and we have all other goods, and we have an indifference curve, and we have a budget line. And this would be the actual division of all other goods and education. And what Friedman is saying is that the indifference curve is really over here. That this is the actual proper indifference curve. This is the improper indifference curve, and we really should have less all other goods and more education. So we have a misallocation of resources. And if there's one thing that an economist, whether Austrian or anyone else, doesn't like, it's a misallocation of resources, because with a little reallocation, we'll all be better off. So what's wrong with this? What's wrong with this is this curve over here. And now I'm going to try to break up my criticism into two levels. One is normative economics, which would be libertarian, and the other would be positive economics from just a non-value-free, a value-free point of view. The problem with this from the normative point of view is, how do we establish that? How do we know that there are spillover benefits? When I bought this shirt, I paid $10 for it, and we know that I demonstrated that, at least in the ex ante sense, I valued the shirt at more than $10. And we know that you who sold me the shirt valued the shirt at less than $10. So we have demonstrated or revealed preference. We know that every time a market activity occurs, there's mutual benefit. How do we know that there are spillover benefits and that they're positive? Maybe they're negative. Maybe, and I think a lot of them are negative. If you major in economics, it's not so bad. But if you major in sociology or feminist studies or queer studies or black studies or grievance studies, what you do is you learn Marxism, and then you'll be a worse voter, not a better voter. So it's not so clear that from the positive point of view that there are benefits. Maybe it's an external diseconomy, which I'm going to get to in a minute. And then from a normative point of view, what you're really doing, look, right now I'm going to smile at you. See? Wonderful smile. And now I'm going to charge you. Right? Hey, everyone give me a dollar because I just smiled at you and I was an external beneficiary to you. I benefited your life and I want you to pay me for it. I mean, this is a joke. This is silly. But yet it's the same logic. So I'm attempting a reductio ad absurdum. Just because I smile at you, oh, by the way, I take a shower once a month, whether I need it or not. Well, it doesn't matter. But if I were to come and give a lecture in your country, you would benefit because if I didn't take a shower, I'd smell and that would be horrible. So you have to pay for my soap. In other words, we have all sorts of reductios ad absurdum that if you allow this devil into the tent, the case over. I mean, anyone can say anything. I don't know, a black person could say, well, Black Lives Matter and I'm black and therefore I'm giving you a benefit. And, so pay me. And I can say, well, I'm white, so I'm giving you a benefit. I mean, the whole thing is silly. And yet economists take this nonsense seriously. Okay, the next market failure is on externalities. This is negative externalities. And here what we have is another supply and demand curve. And now here we have quantity and here we have price. And this is the actual amount, quantity actual. And now we have a negative externality or an external diseconomy. And what this is that over here we'll draw that this is the, the supply curve is based on costs. Whoops, I got to make a P there and a Q there and an S here. And what's behind the supply curve is costs. Well, these are the private costs. And again, these are the private costs. And what are the private costs of making shoes or cars? Well, you got to hire workers, you got to have raw materials, you have to rent a place, you have to have insurance, yak. What are the external costs? Well, the external cost is when I make cars, I let loose pollution into the air, or I dump into the river, and now the river has a higher temperature than before, and all the fish die. So these are the costs that are public costs. And now what we have is we have the sum of the costs. And sorry, I added them up wrong. The sum of the costs is over here. It's much higher. The sum of the costs is here. Get rid of that. It's too early in the morning for me. So I have excuses. So what we have now is the sum of the costs, namely the costs are higher. And have too many cars or too many shoes or too many whatever it is, and we have to have less. And so this would be the quantity ideal. And again, we have a misallocation of resources, and what we have to do is have less of this. And how do we have less? Well, we can have regulation. We can have, tradable emissions rights. We can have just a tax. And then Ronald Coase gets into it, and he has a different way. But again, this isn't that important as to how we move from QA to QI. Namely from this point over here to this point over here. There are various ways of doing it, and I could go into each of these ways later on if you want me to go deeper into this. But the idea is that, again, we have a misallocation of resources. We have too many things that create pollution, and we have to have less pollution. And AOC in the US, this leftist congresswoman and Biden and Bernie Sanders. By the way, Bernie Sanders is a high school buddy of mine. I went to high school with him. We're sort of buddies, but we have very different views nowadays. What they're all saying is, we have to have a Green New Deal. And Biden says, no, I don't really want a Green New Deal, but he really does. It's the same sort of a thing. And at the core of the Green New Deal is we have to have less pollution. Okay. Again, I'm going to approach this from a positive point of view, from economics, and from a normative point of view. From a positive point of view, what you have behind the supply curve is costs. And from an Austrian point of view, costs are opportunities foregone. The cost right now of you attending this lecture of mine is whatever it is else it is that you could have been doing where you're not listening to my lecture. I don't know what you could have been doing: swimming, eating, sleeping, riding a bicycle, and probably you didn't know about this until I just mentioned it. Who thinks of what it is what the costs are of doing anything, because they're subjective. And here we have something on a blackboard or a whiteboard, and it's not subjective at all. It's very objective. So that's that's a positive criticism of it. Normative point of view, and now I'm thinking about the best thing ever written on this is a thing written by Murray Rothbard, and I forget the exact title, but it's something like air pollution. And I forget if it's published, but if you Google Murray Rothbard and air pollution, you'll get it. It's a 90-page paper. It's just exquisite. And what Murray is saying, this isn't an externality. This is a trespass. If I dump pollutants into the air and then it gets onto your lungs, or it gets onto your clothing and you have to wash your clothing more often, it's a trespass. It's not an externality. And we have laws about trespass. Look, if I take my garbage, eggshells, orange peels, coffee grinds, apple cores, and I dump it on your front lawn, we know what that's called. That's called trespass. And if I did it, you'd say, what are you, crazy? Or you'd put cops or something, and nobody does that. Suppose I grind it up and I burn it, and now I send the same stuff over to your lawn in the form of little particles. Now all of a sudden it's not trespass, it's pollution? No, pollution is trespass, and the solution, Murray says, is the same thing as if I dump my garbage on. Let me cut it out, or you go to jail, or whatever, something like that. And then Murray goes into not only dust pollution, but noise pollution, smell pollution. Like if you have a pig farm and you open up a pig farm right near me and the smell goes over to my house, well, how do we deal with that? And Murray's answer is, well, homesteading, property rights, namely whoever's there first. Like take this case. Let me give you a noise pollution case, but it's the same thing, whether it's noise, smell, particles, whatever. Here's an airport, and the airport is 1 square mile, and the noise that the airport makes is, I don't know, 10 square miles, right? Boy, that looks like a flag, but it's not a flag. This is an airport. And here, the planes are flying around. Look, there's a plane. My artistry isn't that great. It sort of looks like a person, but it's an airplane. And what Murray says, if the airport were there first, well, they have a right not only to this property, but also to make noise because they were there first. And now if you come and you build a house here and you start suing the airport for noise, too bad. They own the right to make noise at a certain level. And there were certain jet planes, and then you had a supersonic thing that made noise out here, and properly they banned that one unless it was out into the ocean or something like that. And this is called coming to the nuisance. So you would not have a good lawsuit if you came afterward. And it's just in Pittsburgh, where they make steel in your country. I'm sorry, I'm ignorant of things like that. But in my country, Pittsburgh is where they make steel. And there first, before it was else there, they were making steel. So you can't come and say, well, you're polluting dust at me. Okay, well, I think that's it on externalities. Let me, I suppose, there are other, what do you call it, other market failures. There's public goods, there's monopoly, there's inequality. I'll do inequality now. And unequal income because Alex asked me to do that, and maybe protectionism, but it's already 40 minutes, so I'm sort of running out of time, and I don't want to keep talking. I want more interaction. So let me just do income inequality, but I'll mention that there are many other market failures. There must be thousands of them because the way regulation in economics come up with a new market failure. I remember one time I didn't have anything to write about, so I got a whole bunch of American economic reviews, which is the main, most prestigious journal in economics. And all it was math and stat and market failures, the most amazing thing. So I wrote about 10 articles saying, well, that's not really a market failure. That's not a market failure. But the big three are public goods, externalities, and monopoly. And I did externalities, but I want to move on to income inequality. So what's going on with income inequality? What's going on with income inequality is this. Here we have money. This is a dollar sign. And here we have marginal utility. Marginal utility. And as we know, well, sometimes people say, well, marginal utility is U-shaped, and here is quantity of beer, and here is marginal utility. And they, the first you get, you don't really enjoy it that much. Your second beer, you enjoy it more. And then here's the best beer, and then you reach a point of diminishing marginal utility. Some people say that, but I'm going to draw the marginal utility curve as downward sloping. This is the marginal utility for money. Namely, here you have a very rich person, and here you have a very poor person. And we're going to assume that the first dollar that you get, or the first $1,000 you get, is the difference between life and death, and the last $100 you get is the difference between burning your cigar with $100 bill, lighting your cigar with $100 bill or not. So we have diminishing marginal utility. And what we're going to do is, here is a guy who has $100,000, and we're going to take $1,000 away from him. So now he has only $99,000. We're going to move him this way through taxes. And we're going to give this guy that $1,000 before he had $4,000 a year. Now he has $6,000 a year. And what we're going to say is, we had a benefit of the difference between, namely this much of a benefit, this area here, because you all get it. Namely, this guy only valued, let's say, his money at 25 utils, but this is 100 utils. So we gain plus 75 utils by taking money away from a rich person and giving it to a poor person. Everyone with me on this?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, good.
Yes, okay.
And therefore, it's justified. And again, we go normative and positive. So from a positive point of view, this is a good thing, because we have an increase of 75 utils, and that's great. We're economists. We want to promote utility. We want to have more wealth, more GDP. It's don't have any more goods and services, but we had a misallocation of wealth, and we took wealth from the rich guy and gave it to the poor guy, and now all of a sudden utility is increased. It's as if we have more shoes or more cars or more shirts or more cell phones or more computers. And from the normative point of view, you have a guy named Rawls, John Rawls, and John Rawls says that it's ethical to help the poor. He's not exactly an egalitarian. He doesn't want absolute income equality, which is the result of this, because if there's any, well, now I'm getting into the criticism, if there's any divergence in income, you can always transfer money from rich to poor. Now you have problems. Well, suppose that the poor guy is very healthy and the rich guy is not healthy. Should you still do it? But those are minor difficulties, complications. Assume ceteris paribus, everyone's equally healthy. the only thing people diverge on is how much money they have. Well, then we should take money from the rich and give it to the poor. Now, the big criticism, that's the normative and that's the positive. That is in favor of this income transfer or wealth transfer. Now, let's do the criticism of this. So first, from the normative point of view, the best person there is a guy named Nozick, eminent libertarian, probably the most famous in philosophy libertarian. They were both professors at Harvard. And what Nozick came up was with the Wilt Chamberlain case. Wilt Chamberlain is one of the best basketball players in the country. And let's say Wilt Chamberlain says, hey, anyone want to come watch me play basketball? I'll charge you $20. And 1,000 people pay up. And now he's got 20,000, right? 1,000 people, $20, 20,000. And everyone is poorer by $20. And now, according to Rawls, Wilt should give back the money. And what Nozick says is, look, if you make him give back the money, he's not going to do it in the first place. And we're not going to have any trade. We'll all die. So that would be the normative point of view. From the positive point of view, well, there's a lot of problems here. First of all, there's no such thing as utils. The whole thing is crazy. We Austrians are not against measurement, height, weight, blood pressure, speed. I don't know. There's all sorts of, we're not against measurement, but we're against measurement of utility, because there ain't no such thing as a util. You can't measure happiness. I'm 5 units happy, you're 4 units happy, I'm 25% happier than you? Come on, give me a break. That's crazy. So that's one problem with this. I mean, when you put stuff on an what do you call it? What do you call it? I don't even know what, a vertical axis. On an axis, you're measuring it. Not only are they measuring it, but they're engaging in interpersonal comparisons of utility. I mean, it's one thing to say that I like this thing here, 10 utils, and I like this pen, 5 utils, and therefore I like this as much as I like that. That's crazy, but it's much crazier when I say, well, I like this 10 utils and you like it 5 utils, and therefore I like it twice as much as you like it. That's even one step worse. So that's another problem. Another problem with this is, look, who says that they're on the same marginal utility curve? Maybe the rich guy on this curve. So this is the rich curve, and you take that money away from him, you're taking away 100 and 200 utils, and you're only giving this guy 100 utils, so we have a loss of 100 utils. Is that clear? Should I draw it again?
It's okay, sir.
It's okay. Namely, if they're on a different curve, and now you take money from the rich guy because this poor guy is a bum. He doesn't really enjoy things this much, whereas this guy is an este, and he knows about fine wines and he really enjoys life. And this guy's a sourpuss. So now you're taking more utils away from the rich guy and giving it to the poor guy. Another problem is when you take money away from the rich and you give it to the poor, you get the incentive of the poor to become poor, because we have supply curves that slope upward, and if I give you more money, the more poorer you are, you have more of an incentive to be poor. And if I take money away from you, if you're rich, you have less of an incentive to be rich. And now we have a Gerald Depardieu, who is a French actor, and they're giving him some sort of high marginal tax rate in France, and he goes to live in, I don't know where, I think Belgium or Russia or somewhere else. And then there was a guy named Bjorn Borg, who was a tennis player in Sweden, and they had 110% marginal tax rate. 110% means if he goes in another tennis tournament and he makes $1 million, they'll tax him $1.1 million. Namely, it'll cost him $100,000 to make $1 million. So he left Sweden and went to Monaco. This is just crazy. Okay, well, it's 50 minutes. Time goes fast when you're having fun. So I'm gonna get back to this, and I thought I'd go for 20 minutes, but I don't know. I'm just a blabbermouth. So anyway, now we can have a discussion and questions, criticism, whatever, we can get to know each other better.
Yes, sir. First of all, thank you for this discussion. Thank you for this presentation. Allow me till other participants will advance some questions. Allow me to start from the first issue and to, let's say, my personal perception is that every social event, every social phenomenon could be understood in terms of private property rights. And as you said, maybe there are persons like who are hawks, some persons who are doves, but still we have to put all this current context into a framework of property rights in private property rights in order to understand what means aggression, which is the aggressor, which is the victim. Can we put these pandemics, these epidemics in general, in terms of private property rights? Because it's essential for us as individuals to know what we are doing, what we are allowed to do, what is right and what is wrong fundamentally.
Well, you're making an excellent point, a very, very important point that, some people say the essence of the libertarianism is the non-aggression principle, but it's really one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is property rights. Because, suppose I come up to you and I grab your shirt. Am I a criminal? It depends on who's the rightful owner of the shirt. If you stole it from me yesterday and now I'm just grabbing the shirt back, you're the criminal. I'm innocent. On the other hand, I've never seen the shirt before. Steal it from me, and if I grab your shirt, I'm a criminal. So we have to have a theory of property rights, and the libertarian view is homesteading. First of all, you own yourself. Very few people would argue with that. And then, although, it's interesting, I once got into a little hassle with the New York Times because I said, according to libertarian, voluntary slavery would be justified. You really can't, if you can't sell yourself, you don't really own yourself. If you couldn't sell a shirt, well, you could still wear it, but part of your ownership of the shirt is in a way. So, the example I use, if my son, God forbid, has a horrible disease and it's $20 million to cure him, and I don't have the money, and I value his life more than my freedom, and you, Radu, are very rich, and you want me to be your slave, I can give you economics lessons, pick cotton, you can whip me. I benefit because I value his life more than my freedom. You benefit because you value my service more than the 20 million. So we have voluntary slavery. And it's very distinct from actual slavery, which is a violation of rights, of course. So it's very important that libertarianism is not only the non-principle, but it's based on homesteading yourself, and you mix your labor with the land, and now you own the land, and now I grew corn, you domesticated a cow, and we trade corn for milk, and now I own the corn, even though I didn't produce it, you own the milk, even though you didn't produce it. So that would be the essence of the libertarianism view. Now, how do you apply it to COVID or to any disease, any contagious disease? I once met a family where the little boy had a bow and arrow, and he was shooting at a big, wide tree. But this was not an arrow with ropes. This was a bow and arrow where if he missed the tree, he could kill somebody with it. And I told the parents, I said, look, you can't let him do this, because think of the neighbors, and how would you like it if they were shooting their tree toward you with this kind of a bow and arrow? So there is such a thing as a continuum problem. What's the continuum problem? The continuum problem is, take the statutory rape law. We know that if you go to bed with a 5-year-old girl, you're a statutory rapist. We don't care if she agrees, because we don't think she's capable of agreement like that. You go to bed with a 25-year-old woman and she agrees, you're not a statutory rapist, because we believe if a woman is 25 years old and she agrees to go to bed with you, it's not rape. But what about a 14-year-old girl, or a 12-year-old girl, or a 16-year-old girl, or a 7? Where do you draw the line? I don't know. I have an idea it should be somewhere around 16 or 17 and maybe 13 and maybe 19, but not 5 years old and not 25. And the point is that libertarianism cannot give you an age, because I give you any age, 17, and you'll say, well, why not 16 and 11 months or 17 and 1 month? And now I'm going to punch you. I'm going to threaten Gabriel. Gabriel, I'm going to punch you. And is Gabriel justified in shooting a missile over to New Orleans because I threatened him? No, because, I'm being silly. On the other hand, I'm now going to threaten Gabriel and with my left hand, and the light glints off the watch, and it's in a dark alley, and we're only 6 feet away, and he doesn't know me, and it's me, self-defense. But where do you draw the line? You can't. No libertarian knows where to draw the line. So I'm sort of giving the case for ignorance, or the case for we don't know. We don't know COVID. We don't know how dangerous it is, or then you have people who are asymptomatic and they transfer it. The answer to the problem, one answer to the problem, is privatize all property. My motto is, if it moves, privatize it. If it doesn't move, privatize it. Everything either moves or doesn't move. Privatize everything, the streets, the oceans. And by the way, I have a book on, you mentioned 30 books. One of my books is we should privatize all the streets, highways, and sidewalks. Another is we should privatize all the oceans. Another is we should privatize the moon, the Mars, the space race. Privatize everything. And then each one make their own rules as to whether you into my street or my grocery with a mask or without a mask. There are some libertarians who go into a store and they're required to wear a mask, and they say, well, this is a violation of my freedom. And I say, look, it's their store. If they want you to wear a mask, you better wear a mask. So I think the libertarian solution to the problem would be privatize everything. And this, if you take this seriously, it also answers the immigration problem. Libertarians are very divided. Should we have open borders or not? And Hans Hoppe and Murray Rothbard say, no, we shouldn't have open borders because millions of people will come. There'll be welfare bums. And then many libertarians say you should have borders. My answer is privatize everything. Because look, suppose Radu, you were going to say something?
Yes, I would ask you whether we have, even in a private property system, forms of collective property. And my assessment, even in a free society, you still may have roads or other public, that means goods, which are used, which are exploited by communities. So you are very right that the big challenge today maybe is how we interact in those collective spaces, like what today is obviously public roads, public places, public institutions. In the private sphere, everybody is allowed, and we are very clear what we have to do. But our challenge is, how do you formulate rules in those collective places, which fundamentally today obviously are government owned, but they are also compatible with the free society. And well, this is the.
Go ahead.
Yes, and this is maybe one question, and very because in my assessment, yes, Walter Block together with Hans Hermann Hoppe advanced the idea of visibility of borders of property. So when the borders of property are visible, we can know what is trespassing, we can know what is aggression, and we can know where I become a victim. However, and this is maybe the challenge of contemporary crisis, yes, viruses cannot be visible to reasonable natural senses of individuals. So maybe this the question, is this the challenge to position ourselves towards this case?
Well, here on this immigration thing, Hans and I disagree. I think Hans is one of the preeminent scholars of libertarianism and Austrian economics, but we diverge here. The way I see it, suppose somebody comes from Mars or from Africa or from who knows where, and he starts homesteading in the middle of the Rocky Mountains in Wyoming. I'm sorry, I can't give a European example, but believe me, in the middle of the Rocky Mountains in Wyoming, nobody has ever homesteaded. This is virgin territory. So he flies in with a helicopter and he starts homesteading. And now the ICE people, the government people in charge of borders say, you're not a citizen here, get out. And the guy says, well, what law did I violate? What libertarian law did I violate? And the answer is he didn't violate any libertarian law. So therefore, we should open borders. And if you don't like open borders, and most people who favor open borders think all the immigrants are great guys. And people who want regulated borders think they're, bums and rapists and welfare moochers and stuff like that. I believe that there are many immigrants who we don't want because they're bums. They'll vote for welfare. People leave New York and go to Florida. Why do they leave New York? The taxes are high, and they go to Florida and they vote for higher taxes. People come from Mexico to the United States to escape socialism, and then they vote for socialism in the United States. So the hell with them. I don't want them around. I mean, and even if they're good guys, do we really want 1 trillion people to come to our country? There's no room. So I believe in open borders, but I don't believe the immigrants are great guys. So my answer is sort of a compromise position. That's why I'm known as Walter Moderate Block, namely, have open borders, but have every square inch of property privatized. And then when it's all privatized, then if they come in, they're guilty of trespass and you kick them out. So we can have our cake and eat it. Whereas my criticism of Hans, my friend and my mentor in many ways, is that he's giving up on libertarian theory. The proper answer is open borders and privatize everything. And if you don't privatize everything, then you can be overrun. Now, look, I'm not the prime minister. I'm not the president. If I were the president and there were hordes of people, I might have a different view. But I'm trying to give the libertarian view. I'm trying to be true to libertarian theory. And libertarian theory is we don't want to give up libertarian and kick out this guy in the middle of Wyoming. It's true, most immigrants don't want to go there, but as long as I can prove that one uninvited guest is justified, that's it. It's sort of like in my book, Defending the Undefendable, I defended the pimp. Well, most pimps beat up prostitutes. But I said, well, could there be a theoretical pimp who didn't? Yes, therefore we defend pimps. Most immigrants come into the big cities and want welfare. But we could come up with a platonic immigrant, the one in Wyoming in the Rocky Mountains, and if he's legitimate, then they're all legitimate. So what we have to do is privatize everything, not just farms, but roads. And my book on roads, in the United States, 40,000 people die on the roads. And why? Because we don't have competition. If we didn't have competition, we wouldn't have good shirts or shoes. And if you have competition, there'd be fewer people. And then half the book is objections. Well, suppose you had a private road and he tries to keep you in your house or charge you $1 million. But that would be my response to your question.
Yes, sir. I would like also to continue my questions, and I would like to have your thoughts about this situation regarding the case when during the current pandemics somehow we trust a lot what experts say about different things, and the challenge is whether experts do politics by their own recommendation. So, for example, we have 2 doctors which look at the same disease, at the same case, yes, and obviously our challenges for normal citizens is how do we choose the right recommendation from the part of an expert in health, expert in let's say any other issue, in education, in how do you perceive these expert-led public policies? Is this the end of ideology? Is this the end of the political debate?
The way I deal with experts is as follows. The astronomers are now having a debate, is Pluto a planet or not? And I don't know, whatever they decide, fine. The physicists are now having a debate, is matter like a particle or a wave? I don't know, I'm not a physicist, whatever they decide, fine. None of them are trying to put the others in jail. None of them are trying to cancel each other, right? So it's a debate, and they're debating, and they'll figure it out, and whatever they decide, I'll agree. Because I don't know, or I'll just take it, because, we have specialization, division of labor. We can't know everything, so we have to trust experts. But I know in COVID, when there's a debate over COVID, the people who think that COVID is very serious are canceling the other people. Namely, Apple and Facebook. They won't allow. There were like 100 doctors who signed this report saying COVID is not serious, and they wouldn't let them. What do you call it? They canceled them. They wouldn't allow them to have airtime. Also, with global warming. I don't know about global warming. I teach a course on environmentalism, and I have many articles and a book on environmentalism, but I don't know whether we have global warming or not, because I'm not an expert in that. But I notice that the people who say that there is global warming are trying to put in jail people who deny it. So I naturally assume the other way is true. Namely, I assume that there is no global warming, because the people who say there's global warming don't want to have a debate. And I'm a big fan of John Stuart Mill, who says the only way to get to the truth is to have a debate. So if you and I are having a debate over chess, and you want to put me in jail for my view, and I don't want to put you in jail for your view on chess, everyone should listen to you, because you're being unfair. And it's the same for global warming. It's the same for COVID. It's the same for anything.
Yes, sir.
I tend to agree with the people who don't want to put other people in jail.
Yes, sir. But have you ever heard the opinion of a very skilled doctor, a very skilled nuclear physicist, about freedom or property rights? Because my perception is that such kind of very narrow expertise lead to people ignoring, for example, economics, for ignoring, let's say, welfare effects in society. So they came forward with a very, very tough solution, yes, that which in their opinion is neutral from the perspective of freedom, of liberty, of property rights. So that's my, let's say, that's my challenge for me, because okay, I obviously learn the advice of a doctor. I always learn the advice of let's say nuclear physicist about nuclear physics. But still, I can see that they ignore economics, and they ignore fundamentally ethics from the perspective of natural ethics, from the perspective of property rights.
Well, I'm assuming that there are two doctors who are disagreeing, or two meteorologists who are disagreeing. If a physicist starts talking economics, he has no expertise. Look, Einstein was a socialist, and I don't know that Einstein was a good physicist. I don't know, but everyone says he's a good physicist, so I accept he's a good physicist. But he doesn't know anything about economics. But now, if two physicists are disagreeing about something, and one wants to put the other in jail and the other doesn't want to put the first one in jail, I know who I tend in the direction of. But just because Anatoly Karpov is the expert in chess. Yes, he has a view on sociology. We don't have to, take it seriously.
Yeah. That's the point. Sir, now allow me to invite other participants to have questions, and I'll start by Gabriel Staiko, please.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Professor. My name is Gabriel, as my colleague mentioned. I'm associate professor in economics and, of course, colleague with most of us, which are participating in this meeting. Let me tell you that your book, Defending the Undefendable, brought me closer, decades back, to the libertarian method and the libertarian writings. I have two questions, Professor. First one is related to the issue, the first issue that we discussed. It's about COVID. You mentioned two ways to address this problem, this pandemic. And the one is in favor of more restrictions, lockdowns, and so on. The other one tends to be somehow in favor of freedom to choose how they behave. This approach, the second one, according to your view, tends to be closer to the libertarian way of thinking. Is this correct?
I don't think it's correct. It depends upon the facts. If the facts are that this is a horrible disease, it's very contagious, even if you have no symptoms, you can give it. It's not very libertarian to say, well, everyone should go about their business. Now, I think the pure libertarian thing is privatize everything, and each property owner makes his own decisions. But given the real world, we don't have that choice. I disagree with the view that it's more libertarian to allow freedom. It sounds like a paradox. But look, suppose I take a gun and I start shooting at random. And you tell me to stop it. I said, well, you're violating my freedom. I have no freedom to shoot a gun haphazardly all over the place. Well, if COVID is like shooting only not a gun, but shooting a germ, I have no right to shoot germs all over the place, like typhoid Mary. So I disagree with the contention that somehow it's more libertarian to allow freedom of giving other people diseases. Yes, I'm in favor of freedom, obviously. I mean, you know, we're all libertarians. I'm a libertarian, so I favor freedom, but not freedom to initiate violence. And a bullet is violence, and COVID might be violence. I don't know if it is. But if it is, I shouldn't have such freedom. That's crazy.
Okay. Basically, we have to follow a cost-benefit analysis of the way we should proceed on, we should follow.
May I jump in for a second, Vlad Topan? Because I have a follow-up at this point.
Please.
Professor Bloch, if we don't know, shouldn't the presumption of innocence operate? So until we know...
I didn't hear you. The presumption of what?
Of innocence. So if we don't know that COVID is a severe disease, until someone proves it is, we operate on the presumption that it is not. So therefore, there should be a presumption for freedom. Thank you.
No, I think that's a very good point. But, you know, the experts disagree. Keep your face up because I'm talking to you.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I apologize.
No. I think that's an excellent point. What should the presumption be? What should the burden of proof be? And the burden of proof should be on the side of freedom. But here the experts disagree. And in this, you know, I wrote this article in maybe March when we really didn't know anything. Now my view, not as a libertarian, but my view is that we should allow everyone to do everything. And if old people or sick people are fearful, let them stay at home. Because so many people are dying from other things. And I don't think COVID is that serious. But again, I'm now not speaking as a libertarian. I'm making an excellent point about the presumption. The presumption should be that the burden of proof is on them and they haven't proved it. So you're sort of pushing me around a little bit on this, and I thank you for maybe correcting me. I'm now veering more in the direction of freedom, but based on the presumption business, and the presumption is very, very important, that the burden of proof is on he who wants to change things, and the previous situation was freedom. So you're pushing me around a little, and I appreciate that, because what we're trying to do is get at the truth here. And if I'm a little mistaken, that's okay. I can learn from you guys just as maybe you can learn from me. So I think you're making an excellent point.
Let me also jump in, because I have to leave in 15 minutes, and I want to make just a short point, and especially for Professor Bloch, because he wrote on roads. I have this comparison with the deaths on roads. When you compare it now with COVID deaths, there is a whole difference of approach. Nobody ever thought of banning circulation on public roads, although it's quite deadly. Whereas we have now this disease, and what happened in Romania, at least, I don't know if you know that, but it's quite, I think we are quite unique in the world. We have forcibly interned into the hospitals people that were asymptomatic, but considered positive. So if you had a positive test and you had no symptoms, you were forced to stay in a hospital until you got a negative test. So it's a whole difference of approach between the two problems, and I think they are similar, because we have public roads, we have public health, and we have quite a lot of deaths on one side with circulation with cars, and a different solution. Thank you.
No, I think you're making an excellent point, that there is an analogy between health and transportation, and they're both right now public, even though neither of them should be public. I think Mihai's point, Vladimir Topan, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your point about the presumption, is a crucial point, and one that I didn't really take fully into account. So I thank him again for that. And when you couple that with the idea that who is trying to freeze out and what's the word, cancel the other, the people who are trying to cancel the other are the hawks are trying to cancel the doves, namely the people who say that we should have regulation are trying to cancel the people who say that we should have freedom. Therefore, we should incline in the direction of freedom. But again, the facts are crucially important. We could be wrong, and as libertarians, we don't know, but it's possible that COVID is like the Black Death, and 1/3 of 33% of the whole world is going to die. And if that's so, then, we have to veer in the other direction. I think that the best state for libertarians to take is to not go out on a branch. You know that expression, go out on a branch, because if you're out on the branch, you can fall off easily. It's not incumbent upon us to solve every problem. So I'm sort of a, atheist, theist, agnostic. I'm an agnostic on this issue. I don't think it's incumbent upon us to say, well, this is the truth. And whereas, on the minimum wage, or on pollution, or I don't know, on many other things, I think libertarians should say, look, this is the truth, and we're going to stand by it. But here I'm being a bit of an agnostic.
Yes, sir. I think Gabriel should raise the second question. Yes.
It's quite interesting to discuss about this pandemic, but I will move a little bit to issue number 3, which refers to positive externality. And you, Professor Bloch, mentioned education. And there are some professors who can say, well, as long as we subsidize education, we won't be situated ourselves as society on the same budget constraint. The budget constraint will shift to the right. Therefore, in the next future, we can afford more all other goods and more education as well. What would be your answer?
Well, my answer is that the supply and demand takes that into account. But and that's true of everything. If we have more steel, we'll be able to do better in other ways. I mean, if we don't have steel or plastic, we won't be able to have computers. I mean, that argument that you mentioned in favor of education applies to everything. If we don't have food, we're not going to have much of an economy. Therefore, we should have more food than the market says? No. I think the market, the free enterprise system, will internalize all the externalities. We have, I didn't get into internalization of externalities, but, if you're afraid of your neighbor painting his house pink and blue polka dots and lowering the value of your house, what you do is you go to a condominium or a gated community where that doesn't occur. So I don't think that there's a good case for the government intervening in the education market and saying we should have more education than the market allows, because if we did, we could have more corn, and we need more corn and more chickens to have a better economy also. So I think a reductio ad absurdum can defeat that claim.
Mhm.
Because
Okay.
my usually answer follows Friedrich Bastiat approach. Okay, we invest this amount, you tax people, but we gave up to something else, which could lead us to expand our budget constraint.
Well, I think I answered that to the best of my ability, namely that I stand by the free enterprise system. We'll allocate resources in the proper way. And when government gets involved, it misallocates resources, and it also costs a lot of money for them to do this. So I favor laissez-faire capitalism, and Milton Friedman sort of favors laissez-faire capitalism, but he has all sorts of exceptions. I don't have any exceptions, not for education, not for pollution, not for anything.
Thank you very much, Professor.
I have one question, please, Radu. Also.
Please.
Okay, Christian, I'm also from Academeya. I'm professor. I'm very, very happy that you accepted to be with us this evening. My question is very short. Okay, today we have Romania, but I think that in the United States is the same. We have the problem of vaccine. In Romania, about only 20% of the population is okay with that vaccine. Yeah. So majority of the population is rejecting the idea of being vaccinated as a cure for this pandemic. So my question is the following: we have 10, 15 private companies that are today involved in the development of this kind of product for the market. So we have the freedom to choose between different solutions, most of them being privately offered to the market. We rejected the solutions proposed by China and Russia, because Russia is already proposing us a vaccine that is totally rejected by us, because we do not have a confidence in this kind of vaccine produced by a very, very interventionist state. So the private market is giving us a solution based on a very competitive situation. So the majority of the population in Romania today is thinking to reject the vaccine as a solution to this pandemic situation. What is the libertarian solution to this problem, in your opinion?
Well, it's the same thing to isolating and to wearing a mask and to doing anything else. It depends crucially on whether the vaccine works or not, and how serious is COVID. If COVID is very, very serious and the vaccine does work, and you refuse to take the vaccine, you're a criminal. On the other hand, if the vaccine doesn't work or COVID is not that serious, you should be allowed to have freedom. So I don't think there is a libertarian answer to that any more than there is a libertarian answer to the question of what is the proper statutory rape age. We libertarians don't have to answer everything. Now, I agree that there is a presumption but the presumption can be defeated, and I don't know the facts. Although, I appreciate the point that one of the sides is trying to put the other side in jail and cancel the other side. So I tend to agree with the first, namely more freedom and less coerced vaccinations. But I wrote an article on this. Is it ever justified on libertarian grounds to compel people to have a vaccine? Sure. We can concoct a case where if you don't take the vaccine, you're a murderer. But we just don't know the facts, or at least I don't know the facts. And qua libertarian, I don't think anyone knows the facts. But, so I think the case I gave is, that you become a wolf man or some monster, and, and your hair starts growing on your palms and you become a monster. We can shoot you, and we can ban that pill that will turn you into a monster where you'll kill everyone. Now, I'm doing science fiction here, but it's easy for me to answer questions at the extremes. Is a vaccine ever justified? A compulsory vaccine ever justified? Yes. Now you give me a tough question. Well, how about right now? And I'm sorry. I if I was smarter, maybe I would have the answer, but I don't have the answer, and I don't think any libertarian has the answer, qua libertarian. And I veer toward freedom because one side is trying to put the other side in jail, and also the presumption is freedom.
Yeah.
How strong is this? I don't know.
Thank you. The efficiency of the vaccine announced today, it's very, very optimistic. 95% successful. But we should look to the experts. My additional question, very short one, is the following. Can we, for instance, adopt a soft measure like that? The person that will refuse the vaccine should pay for his cure if he will be infected, and maybe should be refused by public hospitals to be cured as a solution to that refusal. Can be this a solution, a soft solution, to or not?
Well, it's easy for me to get out of that one because I think we shouldn't have public hospitals in the first place. So that would be a sort of a sneaky way to not answer your question.
Yeah,
but I see the power of your question. It's a very sophisticated, well, not really a question, but an argument. And I appreciate the power. And it seems just that if you want to impose risks on other people, then we're going to internalize it and make you suffer the risk, or you take the risk that if you don't take it and it works, we're not going to help you, or you're going to have to pay more, whereas everyone else gets it for free. I see the point, and it's not unreasonable. It's so predicated on the facts, and the facts for the libertarian are up in the air. If we posit the facts, then yes. If we also accept public hospitals, which we libertarians would have a problem with. I wish I could give better answers to this, but in this article that I wrote, each side was so clear on their side that the other side was totally wrong. And I'm a moderate. I'm a Walter moderate block, and that's the position I'm sticking to. And I see, the point about the presumption and the point about who's trying to cancel who, which leads me both in the direction of freedom, but I'm not really ready to jump off to get out on the branch of the tree, the thin branch of the tree.
Okay, Alexandru Butiseacă has also a question, dear professor.
Yes, thank you. I will consume my time to say so. My question for the press. We have a question a little bit, let's say, off the topic, but she wants to ask you, Professor, what's your opinion about the minimum wage? Because this week the Romanian government wants to increase the minimum wage, and she asked for your opinion regarding the implication of this measure.
In the United States is the same. In United States is the same.
In Europe, and in Europe is the same.
The president, the elected president, also said that the minimum wage will become federal.
Yeah. Well, here I'm happy to have a definitive view. I'm not going to be wishy-washy and try to evade everything. Minimum wage is a disgrace. Minimum wage is horrible. Minimum wage is a vicious attack on unskilled workers. That's from the normative point of view. From the positive point of view, if you hate young people, and especially if you hate young Black people, minimum wage law is great. Because then they won't be able to get a job, and they'll commit crimes, and they'll be bored, and they'll go to jail, and they'll be killed. So the minimum wage law is great. It depends upon your goal. If your goal is to make young Black people or young unskilled people in India unemployable, minimum wage is a good idea. But if you want to have a good economy, you have any pity for young people, why is it that the unemployment rate of young people is double and triple the unemployment rate of middle-aged people ever since the minimum wage? Before the minimum wage, the unemployment rate of everyone was roughly equal within, a deviation or something, or even less. Now, all of a sudden, it's double and triple and quadruple. Why? A lot of people think the minimum wage is like a floor under wages, and the higher it is, the more wage. No, the minimum wage is a barrier over which you have to jump at a job. And if your productivity is $5 an hour, and the minimum wage is $15 an hour, then anyone who hires you loses $10 an hour. Here's a reductio. If the minimum wage law is such a great idea, why make it $15 an hour? Why not make it $1 million an hour? We'll all be rich. Make a minimum wage law of $1 million an hour, and we'll all be rich, and we won't have to have any economics. A lot of countries get foreign aid from the U.S. So what the U.S. should do is to tell some very poor country, you don't need any more foreign. Just make your minimum wage $1 million an hour, and you'll all be rich. The lefties are not going to go for that, but they should go for that. Now, there was this Nancy Pelosi, who is the leader of the Democrats. She was interviewed on the minimum wage, and she was asked, do you have interns? What's an intern? An intern is somebody who works for her and learns how to do whatever it is she does. She pays them nothing, but they learn. So the interviewer said, well, isn't this a little incompatible with the minimum wage law? And you know what she said? She tried to get out of it. She tried to filibuster. She changed the subject. But finally, the interviewer, an excellent interviewer, insisted, answer the question. You know what she said? I'm going to call the cops on you. And the interviewer said, what? I'm just interviewing you. Why are you going to call the cops on me? Because she couldn't answer the question. The reductio ad absurdum is very powerful. And then, the sophisticated Card and Kruger study. Look, this is biology. When I buy a shirt for $20, I value the shirt at more than $20 when I bought it. And you don't have to test this. You can't test this. There's no way to test this. It's the same with the minimum wage. If you raise the minimum in equilibrium, never in equilibrium, but we're always tending toward equilibrium. But if the minimum wage is $15 an hour and your productivity is $5 an hour, in equilibrium, you're going to be unemployed. Look, in the United States, the minimum wage law went up from 40 cents to 70 cents, almost a doubling. In maybe it was 37 or so. I'm not sure when it was. And the older people here, if you go into an elevator in the 40s, who do you find? You find some guy standing there. He's not a pervert. He's the elevator operator. And you tell him you want floor 12, and he says, okay, step in. And then he says, wait, I can do better, because the manually operated elevators never went exactly to the floor, and he would raise it or lower it a little bit, and it says step up or step down. The minimum wage law went up from 40 cents to 70 cents. Did any elevator operator lose his job the next day? No. You can't make an automatic elevator the very next day. It takes, a month or 2 or 3. I don't know how long it takes. But Card and Kruger couldn't find any evidence. They raised the minimum wage in New Jersey or Pennsylvania, one or the other, and he couldn't find evidence. His study was not replicatable, and timing is very important. it takes a while for the market to work. The market is not instantaneous. So the minimum wage is just despicable because it picks on the weakest people. If you hurt the rich, they become middle class. If you hurt the middle class, they become poor. If you hurt the poor, they're in trouble. Well, the minimum wage law is hurting the poor. It's despicable, and anyone who favors it, unless they're they hate unskilled workers, they're economically ignorant, economically illiterate. In Economics 101, the intro micro class, everyone should learn this, and yet people, it's really. So the question is, well, why do we have it if it's so horrible? Well, we have it because union labor is competing with unskilled labor. And when the union asks for more wage, the employer tries to substitute cheaper inputs, namely unskilled labor. And the union doesn't like that. And what the union used to do is call them scabs and beat them up. Problem with that is, the Black and Puerto Rican, and you beat them up, they beat you back up, and much easier, just unemploy them, have a minimum wage. In the United States, there's a big debate over abortion. Should we have abortions or not? And you know what the people who don't want abortions, what they do is they raise the bar. They say, look, we favor abortions, but you have to have hospital privileges, and you have to have this, and you have to have that. And as a result, no abortion clinics. And everyone sees that. The lefties see that, and they don't like it, but they don't see it here. If you keep raising things, raising the criteria, fewer people qualify. If you look, suppose we said we only want to have good cars. We want to have Rolls Royces and BMWs, and we don't want to have anything less. Got it? We don't want to have a Volkswagen. We don't want to have a Chevy. We don't want to have a Ford. We want to have good cars, and it has to be the quality of a Rolls Royce or a Maserati or better. Are we helping people? No, everyone's going to go on foot or on a bicycle. It's the same thing. So I'm happy to be able to be definitive about something, even though I on COVID, on minimum wage, I have very strong views, and no presumption and no nothing. Minimum wage is very bad.
Radu Chimandan, please have your question.
Hello, thank you. I am also a professor like many of us here today. Since we have talked about the minimum wage and the drug policy and welfare policy, and since we have in the US this social unrest, why do you think isn't this point of view more widespread? Why doesn't people say, well, let's just get rid of the minimum wage? This would be a very smart policy to address the social unrest, and the drug policy, it's the same case. And the economic case for, or rather against all these policies, the economic case is really, really strong. But on the public opinion side, well, people don't think this. What's your take on this?
So if I understand your question, please correct me if I'm misunderstanding what you're saying. Yes, the minimum wage law is no good. Drug laws are no good. But by the way, in Oregon, they just legalized cocaine and heroin. And in many other states, marijuana is now legal. But what you're saying is, granted that what I say about minimum wage is no good, but everyone wants it. And if they don't get it, they'll riot. So let's give it to them.
Exactly.
That's interesting. I never thought about that. That's a great argument in favor of the minimum wage. Wow. You guys are really pushing me around here. Imagine an argument in favor of the minimum wage. Well, there is another argument in favor of the minimum wage, this, what do you call it, monopsony? You're all familiar with the monopsony, and that's just nonsense, because the only monopsonists are people who hire very technically skilled engineers, and they're way above minimum wage. So that argument is nonsense. But you're giving an interesting argument. We could go better. We could say, look, suppose everyone will die unless we have a minimum wage. And the minimum wage will only unemploy young people. So let's have the minimum wage because otherwise we'll all die. Well, you're convincing me, and now I see the light. I'm growing in office, as they say. They go to Washington D.C., they're free enterprise, and then they grow in office and become commies. You're making a very powerful argument. It's I don't know. I'll have to think about that. But the ultimate one is everyone will die unless we have. Yes, I favor the minimum wage, but everyone's not going to die if we have, those rioters, those Antifa and the Black Lives Matter people, they're pretty vicious. So you're giving me a good argument in favor of the minimum wage, but then again, it could be favor rent control, and it could favor protectionism, everything. It could favor high taxes. Look, it could favor socialism. I mean, you push that hard, we're now all commies. Because if we don't have communism, everyone will riot and we'll all die. Okay, I'm a communist. The hell with Mises. He didn't understand that socialism was not good. We're all socialists now. We libertarian socialists, we libertarian communists, and also Nazis. We can become Nazis because maybe the radical will riot, and therefore we should become Nazi. I mean, we're just having fun here. But I guess I would disagree with your facts. I would say that there'll be more riots when people are unemployed, when young people are unemployed, than this. But now I'm just doing it factually. But the problem with these hypotheticals is you can go anywhere with that. We can prove pretty much anything. We can all become commies because if we don't become commies, we die due to riots. So it's a very intriguing point. I appreciate it. But and that's my first crack at it. But I'll have to think more about it. This is a lot of fun. Thank you.
Okay,
short question. Yeah, one of them is related with the idea of minimum wage, because I wrote also a lot on this subject. In the case of Romania is very interesting. Romania increased a lot the minimum wage. In fact, the former government applied so-called wage-led growth. That is a very, very huge and stupid macroeconomic option to increase the minimum wage together with a huge increase of the wages in the public sector, by thinking that this will expand the aggregate demand, and this will induce the economic growth and development in Romania. And today, in the crisis, in the pandemic situation, a lot of companies, private companies, encountered a huge problem to pay this minimum wage increased by the previous government, socialist government, and they are almost close to the bankruptcy. My question is very short. When I wrote about the very huge increase in the level of minimum wage in the case of Romania, by arguing with the productivity level, as you said, the productivity does not increase so much as the minimum wage increased. A lot of people said something like that. No, not at all. You got wrong, because in that case you cannot measure so well the productivity. So there is a problem with the measurement of the productivity, and also they argue that the productivity can be increased by technological aspects, not by the labor aspect. So they said something like that. In my opinion, I totally agree that this increase should be connected somehow with the competitiveness level, with the productivity. But that was their argument. Yeah, the minimum wage is not connected with the productivity, because this is wrongly measured, or is connected with technological aspects. If you have a point of view on this, it helps.
Yeah, sure. I think half of what you're saying is the Keynesian stuff, that if we have more aggregate demand, we'll have a better economy. But I'm not a Keynesian. I think I'm more of a supply side person. The consumer is not the engine of the economy. But the other argument is that if we raise the minimum wage and we pay people more, their productivity will rise. But that's wrong, because if that were true, then you wouldn't need a minimum wage. Employers would just raise the wage. So we don't need a minimum wage. That's true. It's true. unless you're starving or something like that, and you're on the verge of starving, and now you have some food, and now your productivity rises. But that's silly in a modern economy. No, the reason that movie stars and athletes make a lot of money and CEOs is their productivity is very high. The reason we people here make a middle class income is our productivity is middle class, and the people who work in McDonald's and push a broom make a low productivity is because they add less to the bottom line. Their discounted marginal revenue product is lower. So I would reject the argument in favor of the minimum wage that it'll increase people's productivity. There's no evidence for it. And if it were true, we still wouldn't need the minimum wage because people would naturally raise the wage so that they get higher productivity.
Thank you.
Alexandru,
Please, one question more, please, one. And this is the last, please. I promise. In Romania, dear professor, in Romania, the functional illiteracy rate is about 40 to 45%. Almost a half of the population is practically illiterated from functional point of view. Yeah. So can be this situation an argument for higher intervention of the state in order to convince the people to wear the mask, to get a vaccine and so on? It's a connection between the level of intervention, could be a connection between the level of intervention and the level of education.
Well, in the United States, it's almost the opposite. People, I favor Trump and I oppose Biden. Trump has got problems. He's no Ron Paul, but he's lowered taxes, he's lowered regulations, and he is not as warlike, and he made peace in the Middle East, and he says 17 years in Afghanistan is enough. On the other hand, he favors deficits, and he's a protectionist. But Biden's a commie. Biden is going to bring Venezuela or Cuba. So, I favor Trump. Now, who favors Trump? The illiterate or the literate? The illiterate favor Trump. The people in flyover country in the United States with low education, they don't favor Trump. The people with a Ph.D. or a medical degree, lawyers, doctors, they all favor Biden. So what's his name? William F. Buckley once said he'd rather be ruled by the first 2,000 people in the Boston telephone book than by the Harvard professoriate. The Harvard professoriate also has 2,000 professors, and they're very, very smart. And yet, and look at the intelligentsia in Russia were the ones that were pushing communism, not the average person, the kulak, or so. Here we are trying to educate people. Maybe we're an external diseconomy. Maybe we should all go to jail for, well, not us because we're promoting liberty, but put all the professors in jail. Keep the bus drivers. Let the bus drivers run things. I think we'd have a much better economy if the first 2,000 people in the Boston telephone book ran things than if the Harvard professoriate ran things. So it's almost the opposite of that. It's very strange that smart. Look, take Jews. I'm Jewish, so I can say nasty things about Jews without being called an anti-Semite. Well, maybe a self-hater. I don't know. But Jews are supposed to be the smartest people. And who are they voting for? They're voting for commies. How is that smart? I have a full head of. Look at me now. Like half of you. I pulled out all my hair over this craziness that smart people are stupid, which is a contradiction. Hans Hoppe says contradictions don't exist in nature. I've proven Hans wrong. Contradictions do exist in nature. Smart people are stupid. Take that, Hans. I'm kidding, of course, but we're having fun, aren't we?
Yes, sir. A very interesting question, a very interesting answer. I will pass now on Alexandru to have another question.
Yeah, we have another question for the same journalist. Well, it's a tough one, but not I think not for you. It will have implication for Romanian libertarians, so to speak. What do you think about libertarians working for the state? This is the question.
I work for the state. Right now I teach at a university called Loyola University, which is heavily subsidized by the state. But before I came to Loyola, I taught at Central Arkansas, which was a state university. I taught at Rutgers University, which is a state university, and I taught at Stony Brook and Baruch College and some other, I forget, I've been around. Nothing wrong with working for the state. We're behind enemy lines. Aren't soldiers allowed to go behind enemy lines and disrupt them? Yeah, sure. Also, you know what else I do? Really nasty. I walk on public streets, and I go to public libraries, and I go to public parks. Nothing wrong with that. Now, my favorite character in Atlas Shrugged, the book, one of the books that converted me to libertarianism. The other was Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson. My favorite character there was a guy named Ragnar Danishkohl. What did Ragnar Danishkohl do? He was a pirate. He attacked government ships and took their treasures. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that because they're a bunch of thieves. I'm an anarchist, and I believe that government is a bunch of thieves. And if you're not an anarchist, but you're a limited government libertarian, you believe that most of government is thievery, not all of it, but most of it. And therefore, it's okay to do that. Look, the only way to not have any dealing, you see, it's one thing to work for the government. It's another thing to have something to do with the government, like going street or going to a baseball game where it's a government enterprise. There are only two ways to not deal with the government. One is to commit suicide, which I don't think libertarianism is a suicide pact. And the other is to go off into the woods and live in the woods and have nothing to do with anyone. Apart from that, we have to deal with the government. The government is omnipresent all over the place. And there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with dealing with a thief if you can benefit. I mean, taking money from a thief is a virtue. It's a mitzvah in Yiddish, or is it Hebrew? I'm not sure. There's nothing wrong with taking money from a thief. And who was it? A shirt? I think it was. I was accusing Radu Christian Musetescu of stealing my shirt. No. Yeah, he stole that shirt, the gray shirt that he's a thief. He stole that shirt, and now I'm repossessing it. Nothing wrong with that. He's the government. Government is thievery, and he stole that shirt. And now I'm just repossessing the shirt. So there's nothing wrong with that. I make no apologies for working for the state. By the way, the only people who are not justified in working for the state are the Marxists, because they're promoting statism. I wasn't promoting statism, honest. I was promoting liberty. I was promoting good economics. So I was a virtuous person. People in the sociology department and the people in the history and philosophy department who are promoting Marxism, they should not be allowed to work for the state, and they should not be allowed to get any subsidies from the state. Only libertarians should take welfare. Or, well, not only libertarians, but non-political people should accept welfare. A lot of some of my students are very poor, and they ask me, well, should I take a scholarship from the government? And only a libertarian kid would be uneasy about taking a scholarship or welfare from government. I say, take the money. Nothing wrong with taking money from a thief.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your thoughts. I would, if there are no further questions, and because we reached the 2 hours period, yes, we don't want to abuse your kindness. Maybe if you agree to share our thoughts regarding maybe the future of libertarianism, how do you perceive this intellectual movement? How do you perceive freedom in society in general?
Well, now we have optimists and pessimists, and I am very much a pessimist. I wrote a paper on
sociobiology. Sociobiology is the theory of why we are the way we are now, and it says we are the way we are now because of what it meant to leave children to the next generation 1 million years ago when we were in the caves or in the trees. And we are hardwired in favor of socialism. We're not hardwired in the favor of free enterprise because 10 years ago, you didn't leave more children if you were trading. You left more children if you cooperated and if you listened to the boss, and that's what. Look, Ron Paul gets 1% of the vote. Ron Paul is just. Why does he get 1% of the vote? Well, why is Biden possibly going to win? Because we are all hardwired sociobiologically to be open to socialism. That's why socialism. The articles of Baruch and Mises and Hayek and Friedman and Rothbard and other people like that, for years and years, it goes in one ear and out the other ear. My wife is a socialist. My daughter is a socialist. My sister is a socialist. Half my family is socialist. I try to convert them into the one true faith. I've been with my wife for 50 years and nowhere. People are hardwired. They're not biologically able to overcome this. We are mutants. We are weirdos. Not that we started out as free enterprise, but we were open to it. We read Hazlitt and Ayn Rand or something, and we get converted. A lot of people read that and they say, "Oh, this is fascism." The rock of Sisyphus. You push the rock up, and then the rock comes down. And push it up. But look, I'm having fun. I think we're not going to win unless it's in 100,000 years from now, when biology takes 100,000 years to change. But this is. I can't think of anything else I'd rather do than promote liberty and good economics. So just because I don't think we're not going to win, we're going to fight. And the fighting is fun. I mean, what else should we do? Play chess, listen to Mozart? I mean, those are good things too. But, if you want to have a good life, you have to promote liberty. And I'm doing the best I can. And you guys have asked me some tough questions, but we're all brothers and sisters here. We're all on the same team, at least all the people who ask questions. We have little differences, but so we all share this desire to promote liberty. Look, I have children and grandchildren. I want to make a better life for them, and the only way to make a better life is to promote liberty and freedom. But I'm realist enough to realize that we're bucking up against biology. Biology is tough to overcome. Maybe someone will come up with a pill or something. I don't know. Or maybe one of our students will come up with something that us old duffers can't think of. And I've got some very good students, and I'm sure you guys do also. And who knows? We have to keep a little optimism here. It might possibly be that we'll win and we'll have more freedom, but I don't know.
Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure and a delight to hear some of your thoughts about these very important issues facing us as citizens, as economists. I just hope that we have the chance to meet again as soon as possible. And I want to thank everybody for taking part in this. And I wish you all good luck and good health.
My only criticism of this is I wish I were there and we could spend a few days and have lunch together and dinner together. That would have been better. But given the situation, this is the best we could do. I'm honored to be with you in this way. And I hope in the next few years we can get together again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All the best.
Take care.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you,
Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I